In the normal labor lecture, the previous lesson, we established some norms, how long things should take, some nomenclature and vocabulary. Now we're going to explore the same process as it becomes abnormal. We're going to blow through this chart that we built in the previous lesson, so if you're not immediately familiar with it, head back to normal labor first before progressing here. This is time, this is centimeters dilated. Delivery begins, the onset of contractions at 0 centimeters. It progresses fairly slowly until it reaches a critical point, at which point it very rapidly finishes to the maximum dilation at 10 centimeters. Then the baby's delivered, then the placenta. The time at which this acceleration happens is around 6 centimeters. 6 centimeters is now the right answer. 10 centimeters is the end of stage 1. The fetus being delivered is the end of stage 2, and the placenta being delivered is the end of stage 3. Stage 1 is broken down into 2 phases, the latent phase and the active phase. Stage 2, delivery of baby. Stage 3, delivery of placenta. And stage 4, not really a stage, is to remind you that it still needs to end. Now you remember that a nulliparous mom is considered normal even if she takes a little bit longer than a multiparous. A repeat customer should be faster. Let's go back over the established norms. For stage 1 latent phase, it is normal to be less than 20 hours for a nulliparous mother and 14 hours for a multi. We're going to use N and M from this point forward. Now we learned in normal labor that a nulliparous woman should progress at 1.2 centimeters per hour and a multi at 1.5 centimeters per hour. That's not really what we use anymore to decide if there is a prolonged active phase or if there's arrest of the active phase. Instead, what you're going to use is no change in 4 hours, or the whole process taking more than 5 hours. It's stopped, or it's taking a long time. Stage 2, delivery of the fetus should be 3 hours for a nulliparous and 2 hours for a multi. And regardless of how many times you've been pregnant or delivered, stage 3, the delivery of the placenta, should only be 30 minutes. Let's start with stage 1 latent. Begins at 0 centimeters, it ends at 6 centimeters. Now the thing is, with most abnormal labor, if you just give her a little bit of time, things are probably going to work out. The way latent phase works is by engagement of the fetal head. It is literally in the right position, baby's head gets right up against the cervix and starts to push. As contractions force baby's head into the cervix begins to change. If that's not happening at a speed that we think it should, we can help. The first thing you can do is use a balloon. You insert the balloon and inflate it, and actually just tug on it as though the balloon is the fetus's head. But mom's got this fluid sac in there that keeps baby from coming into contact with stuff. So if her water hasn't broke, you can do an amniotomy. Rupture her membranes for her to get that cushion out of the way so that baby's head can engage naturally. You can also induce this with medications, such as misoprostol. But the thing you're going to see a lot in this lecture is oxytocin. And chances are oxytocin is the right answer. You're going to stimulate the frequency and strength of contractions. Now I started with this because we're not going to usually not use the P's. Latent phase usually caused by early administration of narcotics for pain relief. So with latent phase, you want to use some tools like balloon or amniotomy in order to get mom going. As we'll discuss here in the stage 1 active and stage 2, it matters now more about the 3 P's. The 3 P's are the passenger, that is baby, the pelvis, mom's anatomy, and power. Passenger and pelvis go hand in hand. If mom's got weird anatomy or she's not big enough to fit baby, baby's not going to make it through the birth canal. And in the moment, right then and there, you can't control either the passenger or the pelvis. Mom's got a pelvis, baby is as big as it is. So if you find that the problem that you encounter is a problem with passenger or pelvis, there's only one thing to do. That's C-section. On the other hand, if you think mom's contractions just aren't good enough, then you can augment her power using medication, and that is oxytocin. The old way of thinking about adequate contractions, that's what we want to talk about here, adequacy of contractions. It used to be that adequate contractions were 3 in 10. That is, you had 3 contractions in 10 minutes. That does not assess how forceful they are, only that they're occurring frequently enough. Inadequate or abnormal was anything more than 3 in 30. But again, this doesn't actually help you in the way of, are they forceful enough? It only tells you, are they happening frequently enough? So now what you want to use is the Montevideo unit. And an adequate contraction is 200 Montevideo units in 10 minutes. To do this, use an IUPC, you measure how strong and how frequent the contractions are, and express it as a value. If your contractions are greater than 200 Montevideo units, you have adequate contractions, augmentation is probably not going to help. If you've got less than this, then you should augment to get it above 200 Montevideo units before you proceed to surgery. And that's the thing. If you try oxytocin because you aren't sure if it's passenger or pelvis, and they get better, great. But if you try oxytocin and they don't get better, then you're going to end up with an operation. Let's come back to our chart and see how it's relevant. Arrest or prolonged active phase is going to be treated with oxytocin. Because baby in the active phase is going to be above landmark 0, you're going to be negative in centimeters. If there's a problem with the active phase, then you're going to end up needing to operate from within. That is, if oxytocin fails, the answer is C-section. If you have total arrest of labor, as arrest of the active phase, you may jump to C-section. Here's how you handle this. If you have contractions being monitored and they tell you that it is already adequate, you can jump to C-section. If they don't tell you anything about the adequacy of contractions, the answer is going to be try oxytocin, see what happens. You can always try oxytocin, see what happens, and then go to section to try to avoid doing an unnecessary C-section. Oxytocin is probably going to be the answer. Stage 2 is a little different, right? Again, if it's the passenger or pelvis, you're going to jump right to a section. But here again, you're going to try oxytocin because you think the problem is the power. If that fails, you're going to jump to an operation. If baby is negative and the arrest of stage 2, you're going to have to pull it out with a C-section. If baby is positive centimeters, it's on its way out, you can use instead either forceps or vacuum. You cannot be asked to choose between these, except in the sense of their side effects. We talk more about these in the OB operation lectures. Stage 3 is unique though, right? We know that baby came out. We know that the passenger or pelvis were big enough to fit a big, sturdy, bony baby. The placenta is loose and floppy. It should just fall right out. So then if you don't have delivery of the placenta, it's either prolonged or delayed, stage 3, you know it must be the power. You can do something else other than oxytocin, especially true in the case where somebody has had oxytocin in order to deliver the fetus, and then you accidentally turn the oxytocin off. So if you used oxytocin during the delivery, you may find yourself in arrest or prolonged stage 3. But what you do is different. What you do is start with a uterine massage. You're just trying to get the uterus to contract down and get rid of the placenta. If that doesn't work, try oxytocin. And if that doesn't work, you go in and do a manual extraction. And this is important, so I'm going to star it. You saw earlier you use an OB operative procedure if there's a problem with stage 1 or 2. Stage 3 may offer you that option and you don't want to do it. Manual extraction is you just reach your hand in and pull it out. With the placenta, operations are offered when the placenta has burrowed its way into the uterus and it won't come out. You get that when you look at it and you see the lines of the blood vessels go to the edge and you know you're missing a piece. Retrieving that piece might be surgery, like a D&C. But you don't do that for the entire placenta. This is the wrong answer. Pretty simple stuff, review of normal labor, and then also what you can do to augment labor. If it is passenger or pelvis, you're going to have to operate to get baby out. If it's not, you're going to use oxytocin. Try it out. If it doesn't work, progress to surgery. If it does work, great, continue the delivery. Adequacy is defined as 200 Montevideo units in 10 minutes, measured by a device. If you can't measure the device because you don't have one, remember 3 in 10 is good. Anything less frequent than 3 in 30 is bad. That is abnormal labor.